adjunct professor down in Texas and a longtime adjunct professor, 20 years. You lost your position, and this is a very complicated and interesting case. Tell us what happened in November that led to this dismissal.
Yeah, I've been teaching at St. Philip's College, which is one of the community colleges in San Antonio, since 2003-4, and till fall of 2022. And in January of this year, on the 12th of January, I received an email from the vice president of the department of the school that they are doing an ethic violation investigation on me. So I responded to his email and asked him, what are the complaints? And, just give me more info about it. So what he said was, the human resources will contact me. Nobody contacted me from human resources. And on January 27th, which is like 2 weeks after the first email, I received another email with a letter of termination. And
can I just pause you there for a moment? Because sure. You taught biology, right? And so that's at the centerpiece. We're going to get into what happened around this. But when you got that letter, so you first get notified that there's this ethics investigation. You get the letter a couple of weeks later. What went through your mind after 2 decades of teaching, there successfully, to then get that letter? What were you thinking and feeling in those moments?
I was surprised and I was shocked because, I never expected for such a letter from or such an email from the school, because I've been teaching for that school for the last 20 years and without any complaints. So I was shocked to see that letter, that email.
Now, did you know at that point what some of these complaints were centered around?
No. The first email, no, I have no clue. I never knew what was coming up.
Now, in November, and correct me if I'm wrong, you had been teaching and you talked about, that sex is determined by chromosomes X and Y, very basic sort of biological truths. You were teaching that, and a couple of students walked out of the room. Is that true? And if that's true, is that the root of this?
Yeah, let me just clarify that point, because when I got the letter of termination, what the VP mentioned was that some of the complaints were offensive to the homosexuals and transgender. So I presume, and I assume that very possible it is based on human reproductive system, which I taught, which was in November. When I start a semester, I teach human reproductive system towards the end of that semester, which is November 1st. I don't exactly remember, but I think it towards the end of November. What I taught is just biology for same thing I taught for the last 20 years. So I don't know what happened. Yeah, that is true. When I taught this class, 4 of my students just walked out.
So, and I want to come to you in a moment here, Keisha, because you look at a lot of these cases, and I'm always intrigued by what makes you take the case on. But before I do, I want to just ask the doctor here, you get the letter, then you get the termination letter. Was there ever any conversation at all with anybody else during that time where you had a chance to be confronted with what you were accused of, a chance to respond, explain it? Did you have any of those conversations before you were dismissed?
No conversation at all. No email, no communication. In fact, after the first email, I asked him, what are the complaints? He did not respond. His response was human resources would contact me. Nobody contacted me. Then what I got is the termination letter.
Now, Keisha, I want to come to you on this because you see these cases all the time, and there are a lot of cases I would imagine you're not able to take on, right? First Liberty can't take them on because you have a lot of cases you're dealing with. What was it about this particular case that made you say, we want to jump on board here?
I think just the integrity of the professor, knowing that he's been teaching biology there for 20 years, and also sort of understanding that this probably has a lot to do with the new cultural trends on these issues. And, when I saw the termination letter and I see that the university is accusing him of religious preaching, I think that what they don't understand is even if he was, they still can't fire him for saying something that he believes to be true. So, for example, one of the things he said was that life begins at conception, and maybe many people would interpret that to be a religious position. Now, according to his education experience, that is not a religious position, it is scientific. But even if the university had interpreted that way, they still can't fire him for it because he's talking about this in terms of his ethical integrity, his academic integrity, and it's also protected speech under the First Amendment. So all the way around, the university is wrong here, and we just think it's a shame that they would fire one of their long-term professors for teaching what he's always taught.
Well, and talk a little bit more about that letter, because it is interesting to me that there'd be a mention of, a religious nature when it comes to this. This is a public institution, obviously, as a community college. It's public. And, I've been to college. I think anybody who has been to college, if you are on the more conservative side or a Christian, you probably have heard professors say things that you would disagree with and not think to be true, right? And so it's always interesting in these cases because the question comes to mind, and I don't know that we could litigate it or answer it here, but if this were a reversal and he were, quote unquote, preaching other ideas, would the same result have happened? And I think we know the answer is probably no. But looking at that letter, legally speaking, just to clarify for people, what were the big red flags for you that deeply concern you as an attorney?
Yeah, well, number one, the college didn't follow its own policy, which requires them to give him an opportunity to respond to any complaints. And they fired him without even showing them what those complaints were and what happened. Now, he's assuming that this has to do with his lesson in November about human reproduction, about sex being determined by X and Y chromosomes, about the fact that life begins at conception, because those right now are very hot button issues, even though at this point, they're still based on biological science, his statements. And so I think, the university, knowing that Dr. Varkey is a Christian, I think they're using that as an excuse to say that his beliefs are religious, when in fact, they are also scientific.
So, doctor, looking at just, the evaluation process, when you are a professor, you are evaluated. The college, and I'm sure you've had many of these over the 20 years that you were there. Just to clarify, had you ever had a complaint or a problem in any way before during your career?
No complaints at all. I mean, sometimes, of course, there are students that sometimes they may come to me for a grade, which they may think that they should get a better grade, that kind of things, but nothing like this.
Yeah, that's the standard complaint when you're a professor, and I've done it too. I know, I've taught too. I know exactly how that is, but that's the standard. Nothing like this where it's something that you'd be dismissed over. No. What are you hoping to see happen here, doctor? What is your hope at the end of the action that you're taking here?
Yeah, Keisha, if you would.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, Dr. Varkey obviously wants to be reinstated. And he wants his job back and his record cleared because he didn't do anything wrong. And, he's been working there for 20 years, and we think they should give him the benefit of the doubt and talk to him about whatever issues they have and work it out and allow him to continue working. And that's what we hope to happen.
And you have not had you've had no response yet at this point, obviously, from the school, I would assume.
No, not yet.
Well, I appreciate you both coming on to break this down. We're going to continue to track this story and follow it. And, we'll see where this goes. But appreciate you speaking out.